Another month has gone by, and I think I had my best reading month. This is so freaking heavy. I read 13 books in October, which is a total of 6,115 pages. That is the most amount of books I've read and the most pages I've read this year in a month. This averages out to be 197. This is pretty standard to what I was reading last year, but my reading has definitely gone down this year. And then the average page count just of a book, not per day, the last one was per day, is 470 pages. My most read genre this month was fantasy romance. Who's surprised? I read 3 5 stars, 3 4 stars, 7 3 stars, 0 2 stars, and 0 1 stars. Technically, the only time I've read more 5 stars than that in a month was in July, where I read 4 5 stars. But in July, I only read 1 4 star. So my ranking this month feels higher, and I feel like I loved more books because I gave a lot of 4 stars out too. And in July, I did give out 2 2 stars. So the fact that I didn't give out anything lower than a 3 star, I feel like this was my best reading month. My average star rating ends up being a 3.69 for the month. I will take that. I love that average star rating. 9 new releases, 2 backlist, and 1 last year release. I don't typically read that many new releases, although this year I feel like I've really been on my new release game with these fantasy romance. Maybe I need to continue reading new releases. I read 7 fantasy romance, 5 horror books, and 1 just regular fantasy book, although it probably could be counted as a romantasy because it's just YA fantasy. And into the actual books themselves we go. But I'm so happy with those stats this month. I have some new favorites from this month for sure. The first books I read in October were Forged by Magic and Broken by Daylight by Elizabeth Helen. I gave both these 5 stars. This was a binge that happened the last couple days of September, and it continued on into the first couple days of October. I loved this series. I read all 4 books back to back. I cried for these characters. I was tense with these characters. I was shocked with these characters. It is a new favorite series of mine. This is the Beast the Briar series. It starts with Bonded by Thorns. If you have never tried Why Choose, I would say try it. And if you are a Why Choose lover like me, apparently, it's new that I realized I loved this, but I am. You should definitely pick this series up. We follow our main character whose father gets kidnapped by these 4 princes. She goes to the fairy realm where they're keeping him and says, hey, take me instead of him. And they accept her bargain. A few days pass and she realizes the 4 princes have a curse where their magic is slowly being taken away and they turn into a wolf at night. And the only way to break their curse is to find their mates. So she says, hey, I will bargain for my freedom. I will help you find your mates. I will help break this curse on you. And in turn, I will get to leave free and go home to my father at one point. When it's done. They agree to it, and she tries to help them find their mates. She may fall in love with all of them, all 4 of them, and not want to give them up to their mates. I just giggled so much. This is so bingeable. Please, please, please pick the series up. It's absolutely incredible. It will be on my favorites list of the year. I loved these last 2 books so much. I can't. How am I supposed to wait for book 5? How? Book 4, in my opinion, is the best book. I think they all get better each book, and book 4 was impeccably amazing. After that, we dived into a horror. This has been fixed in my stats. This is one of the 3 stars I gave. However, in my vlog where I read this, I did give this 4 stars. But since I've been sitting on it for like a month now, I really realized this book just has not stuck with me the way I thought it would. And I needed to lower that ranking because it's just left my brain and I just don't seem to really remember the enjoyment I had reading it. I still really liked it, but I definitely think it wasn't what I needed to like have a long-term new horror favorite. This was a book that was in the Reddit No Sleep competition and it did really well. Obviously it's been traditionally published. It is interesting. I wish that I had read it physically because there is apparently like puzzles and stuff within the physical pages, and I had just listened to the audiobook and I didn't know that until afterwards. So I feel like I skipped out on half of the reading experience. But we're following our main character who has bought an old house in order to flip it with her girlfriend. When strangers show up at the door and they say, we used to live here, can you let us in? Like, we just love to look around. Like, I'd love to show my children what my childhood house looks like. She says yes, and strange things really start to happen as soon as these people enter the house. Concept, really cool, but I feel like, yeah, it just didn't stick with me the way I wanted it to. More horror, we have Clown in a Cornfield 3, The Church of Friendo. 4 stars from me, which felt like a letdown until I looked, and apparently I've given books 1 and 2 4 stars, but in my head they're rent-free as 5 stars, so I don't know what that says about me, and maybe I need to go like fix them and make them 5 stars because I just remember absolutely loving them. But this one did get 4 stars apparently, like the other 2. I really liked aspects of this one. I liked the first half, I think, a little bit better. I really liked seeing the church and like the cult of Friendo. I thought that was really creepy. I really liked that new POV we got within this small town that's having a cult take over and like being afraid for your life because you're like, why is everyone just like indoctrinated into this cult? Why does no one see what I see? I thought that was deeply terrifying and so great. Like the scene of her going to church for the first time, absolutely incredible. But I definitely didn't care as much about our regular main POV, what was happening with her, and I felt like the ending was very rushed in this one. These are a bunch of YA slashers. This is the third book in the series, and there's not really much to them other than they're like a slasher, and they're very political heavy, and I really do enjoy that, but I wish that we had gotten more of the politics in this one, a little bit more into the church and like what happened and things like that. So I think I just wanted this to dive a little bit deeper. At the end of the day, I still had fun. I think the kills were fun. I will think about that church scene for a long time. So maybe this will become a 5-star in my head one day as well. Immortal Dark by Tigist Girma, which I gave 3 stars sadly. It's a low 3-star. I don't think I'm going to be continuing on in this series, but I have not fully committed to that concept yet. This is a dark academia vampire story. We're following our main character who comes from a family that in this world, in order to get status and power, you like have a vampire companion. Specific families made a pact with vampires a long time ago where they could only have their blood to survive. They wouldn't be able to use other family's bloods, and she's part of one of these bloodlines, but she's escaped this. She's gone to live somewhere else her whole life, but when her sister mysteriously goes missing, she comes back and takes up the mantle of like the head of household because she's the last one standing. So she has to go into this dark academia society and figure out what's happening while she tries to find her sister, but also she's very against the idea of vampires and the pact that she is in currently. I don't know, I just feel like this was kind of supposed to be a romantasy and I didn't really vibe with the romance in it. I liked the dark academia setting. I really liked the tests we had and things like that. I was interested in the plot line, but I was never interested in the romance in this, and I think that's where this very, very much fell short because the romance is predominant in this and plays a pretty big part of the plot. So I feel like it needed to have an equal share of my love when reading. So yeah, sadly a 3-star, and I need to decide if I'm going to unhaul this edition or not. So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. I am so sad. I loved Black Sheep, so I truly thought Rachel Harrison was going to be my next favorite author, and sadly since then I've read this book and another book by her and I just didn't love either of them. They leaned a little bit too literary for me. This just was not it. I really enjoyed the vampire parts of it and like the gore that we did get, like the body horror in this was really good, but for the most part this was just so repetitive and so boring, watching our main character be absolutely stupid the entire time and have an obsession with her best friend who's so selfish and like just throw her out the door. I couldn't relate to what was happening in this and I really struggled to care about our characters. I did like our male vampire and I wish we had gotten more of the love scenes because I think I could have liked a romance that happened within this. I just wanted more of the vampires in this and less of it just being a spiral of our main character's thought. However, I think that's a Rachel Harrison thing. I feel like Black Sheep was probably just a luck of the draw book for me, and I'm not sure I will ever feel the love I felt for Black Sheep again within a Rachel Harrison story. A little too literary for me, but I will probably keep trying because that's who I am as a person. Then I picked up Thief of Silver and Souls, which is another Why Choose, and I really liked this. However, although I just told you it was a Why Choose, there's literally zero romance in book 1. The Why Choose is going to come to play in 2 later books I have not continued on. But yeah, in book 1, no romance. No romance to be found. This is very, very plot heavy. It kind of reminds me of like a YA fantasy. We're following our main character who is a thief and she finds a dead body and somehow that person's soul gets trapped within her. And that person was murdered because she knows about a conspiracy on the royals. And she somehow talks our main character into helping her find out who murdered her and uncover this plot. The thing is, she has some companions back at the school that she was working with, and so we send our main character kind of undercover as like a friend of the girl who died, since the girl's in her head, to her group of friends that have been helping her solve this murder. The murdered person friends. Very confusing. They're in the same body, okay? And she ends up becoming like an undercover person for them to help figure out what exactly is going on. They realize she has good skills and she can figure this out, and the men are lost without her, which men being lost without women, valid. And I really just enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the plot line. I really enjoyed the magic system in this. I thought it was really cool. You like give something up to a god to have magic. I thought that was so cool. I loved the murder mystery plotline. I was constantly intrigued by who did it, what was going on, what the bigger scope of the mystery was, and things like that. And I did enjoy the men. I wish they had a little bit more personality, but I'm excited to continue on in the series and see that build and see those why choose moments. And there's one guy in particular that I think is gonna have a lot of banter, and I really, really am excited for that guy. And the cliffhanger book 1 ends on, I really need to continue book 2 ASAP. I feel like this could be a really good book to dabble into the why choose world, since it doesn't have any romance within book 1, that if you are looking to like try it out, I would suggest this one. Then I read Anathema by Carrie Lake, which I gave 3 stars, probably like a 3.5, and I've been thinking very heavily about this book, and I'm really excited to continue on eventually. Carrie Lake does atmosphere very well. I actually read another book by her later on in this wrap up, and I really enjoyed both of them. They just feel very like atmospheric, and her writing is very, very well done, and like really has you like setting the scene. Like you feel like you're a part of the story, which I really enjoyed. I think her books are a little bit bloated, and Anathema was very much bloated. Anathema follows our main character who lives in a town that has something called the Killing Woods next to them. They believe that if you go across into the woods, something in there is eating you. Now, our main character was left as a baby at the outside of these Killing Woods. There's like a gate. No one knows where she came from, but one of the families took her in, but it kind of means that the entire town has kind of seen her as odd or a part of the Killing Woods, or like a witch of some sort. And this town is known for not being very nice to people they think are odd or different or don't believe the same thing, so she kind of has to pretend because she doesn't really believe the same things. She does feel different. And when something happens, she is vanished into the Killing Woods, where she finds through the Killing Woods and the scary thing in there, there's a whole other realm that she can go through, and she finds a lot of magical beings that are out to kill her. But she's protected by our love interest, and I love him. He's very morally gray, and I really enjoyed him. I really enjoyed the magic in this as well. He essentially can control like scorpions. His brother can control spiders, and the spider scenes were deeply disturbing but so incredibly done. I loved every part of them. His brother really gave me the creeps, but then also was such a softie. I truly loved the way I felt for the characters in this. Like, I will be picking up book 2 when it comes out, even though this was far too long, even though it's just a 3.5 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed this and will be recommending it. And the more I talk about it, the more I feel like I really did like it. Like, the strong parts of this book are so strong. And then there's some mid parts. And I think that's a struggle. Like, I feel like it just didn't need to be as long as it is. But I will be picking up more from this author. I really did enjoy, like, the actual story that we got. And the romance. I really enjoyed the romance. Oh, and the themes. There's some dark themes. There's some dark things talked about. There's some trauma that is, like, abuse that is covered, that is done very, very well. I really did enjoy this. And then I dived into horror, and I read Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman, and I gave this one 4 stars. This is a book I will be thinking about. I do think about. I really enjoyed it. Not the scariest book I've read all year, not the scariest book I've read in my lifetime, but a very, very well done, creepy setting story. It is told from the POV of a, like, 8-year-old girl who sees something in her closet that she calls other mommy. And that's, like, all I'm gonna tell you about, like, the synopsis, because I feel like that's all you need to know. But the idea of, like, a little kid with an imaginary friend that's kind of creepy in her closet that she calls other mommy is terrifying, because, like, I mean, kids just see terrifying things, and, like, you would just put it up to their imagination. And I found this book deeply, like, tense and disturbing at times. Like, I just felt on the edge of my seat. Not that I was necessarily scared, but, like, I was stressed for everything going on. And I really liked the conversations on top of the horror aspects. I loved that we had this, like, conversation about adulthood and relationships and how your life could have been different, and depression and things like that. I really thought that the dynamic between the family was very, very well done. And just like Bird Box, which is by Josh Malerman, it just left me feeling unsettled, and I really, really liked that feeling. I recommend the audiobook. I know so many people were hating on the audiobook, but I think the audiobook made this for me. The narration is done by, like, a 16-year-old girl, and she hits that 8-year-old girl voice so well, and it made it just, like, extra creepy for me, and I really, really enjoyed it. 4 stars if I didn't say what I gave it. Then I read Ghost Camera by Darcy Coates, and I gave this collection 4 stars. This is a Darcy novella, and then there's a bunch of short stories. There's also other novellas within it. I actually think that the title story, Ghost Camera, was my least favorite in the entire collection. I would honestly almost skip Ghost Camera. However, there is a little note from the author at the beginning saying that Ghost Camera was one of her beginning stories that she wrote. When they asked her to repub it, she was scared, and she wasn't sure she wanted to, so that's why she ended up adding more stories, but that she was still proud of Ghost Camera when she read it back, and it wasn't as bad as she thought it was going to be. But I think I could tell that it was one of her first stories. I definitely like Darcy's more current stories more than her backlist. I'm reading through her entire backlist, and I have been finding that, like, the more recent stories, I really can see where she's grown and adapted, and I really like her now. Like, I like her old stuff too, but her new stuff is just so much better. I did have some really, really incredible stories in this. I think the last novella is the best one with the VHS tapes, but there's some other creepy stories. I thought the lighthouse story was really creepy as well, and there was a really short story about, like, a woman trying to keep something in her house, and I thought that was also creepy. I would love the last story to become a full story. Like, the VHS tapes and, like, what was happening there was really creepy, and I think it could have been done really well by her. I definitely recommend the collection. Darcy Coates does write short stories pretty well in my opinion, so 4 stars for this one. Then I read The Serpent and the Wolf, which I gave 3 stars. This is a debut romantasy coming out in November. I had an arc of it, thank you to NetGalley and the publisher. I did enjoy this one. I think that for a debut romantasy, this has so much potential, and I'm really excited to see where the story goes and how much the author grows as new books come out. It wasn't my favorite, no. Do I think that there were things that it struggled with? Specifically, its characters, like its side characters needed a little bit more personality, yes. Did I enjoy the romance? Yes. Did I enjoy the plot? Yes. Did I enjoy the world building? Yes. I feel like they weren't necessarily done to, like, top tier quality, but for a debut, I just see so much potential in this book, this writing, all of it, that I'm very, very excited for the next one, and I enjoyed it. Like, I overall had a good time with it. It is a story about our main character who is put into an arranged marriage when her parents are dead, the queen and the king. She is sold off by her brother, the new king, to this nation. This guy's, like, very cruel, and she thinks that her brother is selling her off, hoping that she will die from her magic that's, like, a poison to her in this new kingdom, and then he has a reason to start a war with this new kingdom without losing his nation's support. It doesn't really go the way her brother expects, because her husband is not as cruel as they say, and his land is very interesting. The city was very well loved and rounded, and she finds a place in the city, and a deal is struck with her new husband to help them both out of the situation that they are now in. I did really enjoy this. It's very political, so if you like a political fantasy, I definitely would pick this up. It's very, very different than The Bridge Kingdom, but if you did like The Bridge Kingdom, I would recommend this one. I read Nightshade by Carrie Lake. I gave this one 3.5 stars as well. I truly don't have a lot to say that I didn't say for Anathema. I have very, very similar vibes for me where they were just too long, but, like, both were done so uniquely and were something that I had not read necessarily before, and the atmosphere was so good. Nightshade follows 2 different timelines. In our first timeline, we have our main character who, her father was a Yale professor, very well respected, but then when his wife died with no body seen, he starts to research into the Nightshade, which is, like, a realm where people go when they don't believe in anything when they die, and they can come back from it, potentially. Everyone just thinks that her father becomes delusional, and he's no longer well respected. When he dies with no body found, and a strange feather is found in her room, she starts to think, maybe my father wasn't delusional, and there's something behind this Nightshade theory. And she starts researching into it, and she stumbles across Nightshade and what that means, and some history starts to become important. The other timeline is way, way back. We follow our character whose mom was burned at the stake for being a witch, and she is taken into a cult who thinks that they can cleanse her of the evil in her soul because her mother was a witch. And we watched the cult really treat her really poorly, and people in power be disgusting and just corrupt. And there's a romance that happens within there because she finds the Baron, who's also kind of seen as corrupt. However, like, the darkness has corrupted him, like the devil's in him, but he's kind of given a little bit of leeway because he is of one of the richer families, and him and our main character kind of bond. There's a third POV, which is in the present day, and it is a fallen angel that exists within Nightshade, and everything starts to connect and ravel together. I really did think that this is very unique. I liked the romance in it. I liked the plot in it. Just way too bloated. And at the end of the day, it kind of read like a standalone novel to me and not a duology. So I'm interested to continue to see if I still feel that way and if I feel like the second book is necessary. But overall, I enjoyed this and will be recommending it. The last book I read was a 5-star. I love that I started and ended the month on a 5-star. The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I finally did it, guys. I finally picked this up. I finally completed, I feel like, my YA to romantasy pipeline. Well, there's probably more on this that I need to read, but like my main ones were Red Queen and Ember in the Ashes and this. I guess also Throne of Glass, which I'm reading still. But I feel like those are like the necessities. As a romantasy reader, you had to read these YA books. You don't actually have to, but like they're just like the most well-loved ones, and so I wanted to. I ate this up. I read this in like pretty much one sitting. There was a lot going on, so it wasn't really one sitting, but it felt like one sitting. The pages kept turning. The story was engaging. I loved the world building in this. I really, 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 really love that, like, this is such a traditional fae world. It's not the fae we know. It's not fae just because they have magical powers. Like, the traditions, the actual lore behind fae are in this, and I really, really, really enjoyed this. We're following our main character, Jude, who, when she was 7, someone killed her parents. The thing is, that person, that someone, was her older sister's biological father, who is a well-respected knight in fairy, the realm of the fae. He is fae. He feels obligated to take care of his ex-wife's children since he murdered her, and takes Jude, her older sister, and then her twin sister back to fairy and raises them as their own. The thing is, fairy is not very good for humans. It's very cruel. It's not a nice place. And he raises them kind of as if they were fae, but they can never truly be fae. But then they're also not human enough to be with the humans because they're treated differently. And so it's like a weird situation for them to be. And Jude just wants to prove that she deserves to be in fairy. And she's going to do that however she has to. And one of the ways she tends to do it is by getting under the skin of the cruel Prince Cardan. But what happens when they absolutely hate each other, but they end up needing to work together? This is just so good. I really loved all the moments. The Jude and Cardan moments were so good. The tension in this is so good. Like, truly, this does will they, won't they tension just so well. Like, the closed doors, so good. But even without the, like, spicy scenes, this was peak for me. Amazing, incredible. I'm still thinking about it. I absolutely loved and adored it. 5 stars. I've already read book 2. I need to continue into book 3. You'll see those in next month's wrap up probably. Incredible, 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 incredible. Let me know what your favorite read of the month was down below. And if you'd like to watch the vlogs where I read all of my 5 stars in, here's one and here's one for you. And if you'd just like to leave me an emoji just to say you were here, leave me a pumpkin emoji because it is my October wrap up. And have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day.